I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. This is part 2 with our friend Carl in Oklahoma. Tom, would you like to kick this off?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank everybody for listening today. And Carl's got some great new information that we didn't get on the first episode. But before we get going, I just want to say if you like the show, let us know. Click the like and subscribe. It really helps us out. And if you want to support the show, you can do that. We've got a link to Patreon in the description on YouTube. And with that said, I'm going to hand the mic to Carl. And Carl, fill us in. What's going on?
Oh, not a whole lot. I'm fixing to go out to the lake with the wife, and it's going to be her first time getting to listen, so this ought to be interesting. But not much, just a lot of work. Haven't got to spend much time out in the woods here lately, but I'm changing that this evening. So where would you like to start this evening?
Well, we could pick up where we left off, 2-3 weeks ago. And, you had the encounter of the one by the tree with your friend. But you said that you've had some other encounters in Oklahoma. So let's start
Texas.
off with the more recent, and we'll just work our way back.
I was thinking about one that I wanted to talk about the other day. Over northwest Oklahoma, where I believe I told you about the dog man encounter. There is a lot of oil field going on out there. There's a lot of boogers out there. But one night I was heading to the disposal, back and forth, was hauling leases that night. And this year had been really, really bad on truck drivers hitting deer at night. I mean, it was so horrible that the company that I worked for went through and put drill pipe bumpers, bumpers out of drill pipe and put them on the front of these semis because they were tearing the crap out of our trucks. And the funny thing is, I know you guys have probably hit deer. Seen them on the road at night. They'll look at your headlights, they'll stand there, and they'll kind of mosey out into the road right in front of you, and you hit the cotton picking thing. Well, the difference is these things would start out in a ditch, and you could see them, and they'd be kind of restless, and then they'd take off across the road, and then they'd hit the brakes, go sliding on the pavement, trying to get back up on all fours, and run right back in front of you. Well, one night I had three of them start running out in front of me. All three of them hit the brakes. On the other side of the road, they were safe. They were out of the way. I wasn't going to hit them. And they hit the brakes, and all three of them at the same time are trying to get back up on their feet, and they run right back in front of the semi. And I splattered all three of them. I'm, weighing about 90, almost to 100,000 pounds. There's no slowing this truck down. So, but anyway, I got to thinking about that one night, or I got to thinking about after that, why I've never ever seen deer do that. I'd seen them walk out, and they'll walk out into the road, they'll stare at your light, or they'll stand at the side of the road, just enough for, if you're not paying attention, you're gonna smack him. I mean, he's gonna stand there and stare at them headlights, and he's not gonna move. But these things are running across the road, hitting the brakes. I mean, they're just sliding. They're falling down, and they're trying to get back up so they can run back across the road. So I got my spotlight, my big old spotlight, and I put it up on the dash, plugged that sucker in. Weather is like cold, but I don't care. I'm going to roll my windows down, and I'm going to keep the window down so I can stick my hand out the window with the spotlight to maybe see what is going on with these deer. And I kind of, in the back of my head, I kind of knew what was going on, but I wanted to see it for myself to verify what was actually happening. And sure enough, I'm going to the disposal. I'm barreling down the road, and I see 2 deer. I see a buck and a doe. They're off in the ditch. I can see them up in their ways, and they take off running. And I stick my hand out the window as I'm coming up, and they hit the brakes, and they hit the pavement, and I hit the trigger on that spotlight. And there's 4 boogers on the other side of the road standing over there, jumping up and down. And it looks like to me you can see their mouths open like they were screaming, and they were trying to get them deer to go the other direction. And at the same time, I stuck my hand around the windshield and I stuck it on the other side of the road. And there's 2 of them on the other side of the road doing the exact same thing, trying to get them in the middle of the road. Now, this sounds a little bit crazy, a little bit off the wall. I know it does. But that was the first time that I'd ever seen anything like that. And it was nuts. It was crazy. But you could literally hit a deer, 2 or 3 deer, drive 1.5 miles down the road to the disposal, unload, which takes 13 minutes, come back, and by the time you got back, those deer would be gone. They wouldn't be there.
Carl, this isn't the first time we've actually heard this. Not quite like that, but there was a incident with Lee years ago in Central Oregon. He saw a guy in a truck ahead of him hit an elk and just kept on going. And Lee drove down the road, and then after, he said about 10 or 15 minutes, he turned around and came back. He thought, I just need to make sure it's dead. If it's not, I'm going to put it out of its misery. And when he got back, exactly like you said, there's nothing there. It was gone. And it hadn't walked off. There's no trail. It's as if picked it up, carried it off. So this is interesting. This kind of a repeating pattern with these things. So anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No. I just thought, I just thought that was kind of I'd seen them stalk before. When I was a kid and I was out there at Canton, and I'd watched them stalk deer before. I'd watched them stand at trees and wait for rabbits to come up to them, and they would just down there and grab a hold of that rabbit, and you hear that rabbit squeal, and they just twist the head off of it. And and I'd watched them do stuff like that, but but never actually use something else to make the kill. You know what I'm saying?
Creatures, you said you saw them like intimidating.
Yeah, I couldn't hear them because I'm driving down the road usually most of the time about 65, 70, 75 mile an hour trying to get to the disposal. And, that wind hitting that semi and the diesel motor going, I could see that their mouths were open. And I could see that they were jacking their jaws. They were jumping up and down, waving their arms, and I could see that they were, they were definitely causing what the deer were doing. I mean, and it was, I'd never seen anything like that. And it was just, it's kind of an assurance, not an assurance. It's kind of one of the things where, these things are a lot smarter than we think they are. And, I don't know if that was just them toying with their dinner or, making the hunt easier. Because they can't just go to the hospital and get fixed or, get stitches or anything like that, so to make a kill easier like that, makes sense. But, at the same time, yeah, it was just pretty wicked to watch.
How long ago was this?
Oh, that was just, let's see. That was just last year. Last winter. Last December. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. It was
pretty recent.
Yeah, it wasn't that long. Yeah, pretty recent. And that wasn't the first time, especially going down Highway 11 up in northern Oklahoma. The deer, they'll come out into the road. They'll stand on the edge of the road. And, deer, they'll freeze in your headlights. But, for a deer to take off, go barreling across the road and hit the brakes and then, stumbling and trying to get up and go the other direction, it's something, it was something that definitely caught my attention and got me to thinking, that's happened several times throughout my career of being out in the middle of nowhere in the oil field. Especially down high, get out Highway 11 and out northwest Oklahoma, northern Oklahoma, up out there in the boonies, and this happens quite a bit. So, and I don't know, I can't say that it's every time it does happen to somebody that it's, it's the boogers or whatever doing it. But I could say out there, yeah, more than likely, more than likely you get a deer run in front of you, hit the brakes, hit the ground, and stop and check it out. You might be surprised what you see on the edge of the road.
So you've seen this more than once, is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. I've seen that behavior with the deer more than once. Now the only time that last year when it was 3 deer at one time doing it, because most of the time, one, if there's 3 or 4 of them, you'll usually have, one will jump the road, then here comes another one, and then here comes another one, and then here comes another one. But at that time, they were bunched together. They were all, they were like hurt, like they'd herded them to the road, and they were trying to keep them there. But most of the time, when it's, if it's 3 or 4 or 5 deer, you'll see one jump the road and run across, another one will jump the road and run across, and then all of a sudden there's another one that jumps the road and he runs across and almost jumps in your passenger side window or something. But this was these are totally different, where they're in a group, they're bunched together. It's like the boogers are bunching them together. They got them trapped, and then they herd them to where they want them to go and keep them there. It's like, there's some intelligence there. It's not just, to me, it's not just by chance that they're getting them to do this. There's some intelligence there. There's some planning in that product, in that action, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it's a very deliberate, intentional thing. And it sounds like it's, like you said, planning, forethought, and useful. You're doing the work for them.
Yeah. Well, most definitely.
Have you ever, I'm curious if you've ever seen one of the boogers get hit by a truck. That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I've had two times where I have almost hit one. 2 times. I both times. Well, one was a dog man, one was a booger that I've almost hit a booger. Where I told you about the one. I think the last show I told you guys about me coming up to the farmhouse, coming up and over the top of the hills and zipping around the corner. And as I come around the corner, there's one standing there straddled at the farm. He's across the road from the farmhouse, but he's straddling the fence. And as I come around the corner, I seen him in the headlights. My headlights went right across him. He's straddling the fence. As I come around, my mirror almost clips him, and I almost hit him with the front bumper. But I kind of cut it a little bit harder because I didn't want to hit him. But he picks his foot up, sets his foot down, and you just straight sprint alongside the embankment. There was a man-made pond there, and he just straight sprint, just took off. I started grabbing gears because he started outrunning. I mean, he was outrunning me there for a second. And I started grabbing gears, putting my foot on the floor. And when he split off, I looked down at my speedometer where I had it on a digital on the dash, and I was doing 46, 47 mile an hour when he split off, and he was still ahead of me. I still wasn't catching him. So, I mean, I was staying with him, but I wasn't catching him, if you know what I'm saying. But, you know,
wow.
yeah. And then, you know, right after that, I get on location and I slam on the brakes.
What time of day was this?
What kind of what?
Oh, I was curious. What time of day did this happen?
This was late at night. This was oh Lord, this was probably 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it was late at night. It was.
Well, the reason I'm asked, I was just curious if your headlights, if you could determine, you know, what color was it, a black or brown, reddish?
He was a dark red, dark reddish brown. Dark, yeah, he was a dark red. He was a big boy. He was a dark reddish brown. I couldn't really get his facial features that much, but I mean, as far as his body type, yeah, he was definitely he was one of the few patty type, which you might think of the patty type boogers, which they're kind of rare in Oklahoma. Most of the boogers here look more like they have more of a snout, and a, you know, smaller, shorter, 8, 9 feet tall, broader shoulders, thicker body, type boogers is what we mainly that I see here in Oklahoma. The juveniles, most of them seem to be kind of skinny for the most part. And it seems more cone head, more of a cone type of head, the juveniles. It seems like they lose their cone as the older they get. That makes sense. It's
Yeah,
like they're,
sure. It could be, yeah, for a variety of reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't, you know, you would think if you had a cone head, you'd keep that cone head, but the juveniles seem to have more of a cone type of a head. The older they get, it seems like that cone turns more rounded. But yeah, him that night, I remember he was more of the patty type of booger. He was a good 9'6". The reason why I know that is because I went and got a 2x4, a bucket of rocks, and a tape measure, and got in my semi, put feet to inches on the 2x4, and then set in the semi where I'm sitting, and I used my mirror on the side of the truck as a base, which the bottom of the mirror on my Mac was at 8 foot, and then from 8 foot to the top of it's 9 foot, and then you got 9'6", and yeah.
Oh, very good. That's a good way to validate, you know, what you think you saw. You can really confirm it.
Yeah, well, I did that. Well, I also did that. I did that at 10 foot away from the truck. I did it at 15 feet from the truck, and 25 foot and 35 feet from the truck, so that I could get where I was sitting, when I'm sitting in my semi and I'm looking across, I can see just how big they actually are. And there are some in Northwest Oklahoma that are over 10 foot, even close to 12 foot. You don't You don't see them that often, but when you do, you really gotta. I've even almost a couple times have thought that I was looking at maybe two of them, maybe even three of them bunched together. But once you really get to looking at it and you take a picture of it, and and that's one thing I've learned is to take a picture of a booger. The camera does not like to focus in on them. It's I even went and spent $5,000 on a freaking camera and lens and stuff to try to get good pictures. But the problem is it's the cameras, they won't focus on the actual animal. They won't focus on the booger. They'll focus on the tree next to it. They'll focus on the tree in front of it. They'll focus they'll focus on everything else but what you're actually trying to take the picture of. It's like light. I swear that their hair is translucent. It's just like a polar bear hair. I mean, scientists say polar bears are actually black and their hair is black, but because of the white and everything around them, their hair shows up, and they show up as being just white, where their hair is hollow. It's translucent. UV light, where UV bounces off of us, their hair works like a prism where it just redirects the light. The light just goes through and around, or whatever, however you want to put it. I'm not a scientist. I mean, I'm not trained in that type of thing, but I do know that on a high UV day, where the UV light, the UV outside is really, really high, if you don't know what you're looking at, one could probably be standing 10 foot in front of you, and all you're going to see is a ghost. I mean,
Well, that's interesting. We have heard a couple times people talking about the how the characteristics of the hair that they saw was unique. It wasn't what you expected. So yeah, who knows? That could very well be what's going on. So you had some other encounters. Tell us a little bit about some of those.
Well, I'll tell you, probably about 65%, 60% of my encounters have been work-related encounters. I'll see stuff like structures. What most people might think of, most people might think that, that's just a pile of branches on the side of the road. But I'll see it and I'll know that is an actual structure because of the way that it's put together, the way that it's built. And I'll get out and I'll look at it, and I can't have a couple times. One time on the what's the name of that location? I can't think of the name of the location right now. It was a 4-point location, but I've driven by that structure several times, and I've been in a hurry. This time I was kind of had a little time to spare, so I stopped. And I got out of the truck, and I walked over there, and I looked in it, and I thought, hey, that's a perfect hunting hide, a hunting blind. And I walked around to the other side, and I'm shining my light in there, and I'm looking at it, and I looked how they built it, how they put it together. And I go to turn around and walk back towards my truck, and I hear something. And sure enough, they start throwing stuff at me. They didn't want me in there. And I've had stuff like that happen several times. I'll stop, I'll see structures, I'll stop and I'll just go look at the structures, see how they're built, see, maybe see if they're kind of if they're newer or older, or they've been around a while, or if it's something that's kind of a recent build. And
let me ask you real quick. You said you went inside of this this structure. How tall do you think it was, and what kind of an entrance? What did that? Was it just where some of the trees weren't together? Describe it a little bit.
The structures here in Oklahoma, I'll tell you the first thing I look for in a structure. Has it got any saw marks, chop from axe marks? How were the limbs broken, or now were they broken from a force break or like a stress break? Stress break bringing like from ice, an ice storm, a limb gets enough ice built up on it, it breaks differently from if something just grabbed a hold of it, twisted it, and snapped it. I'll look for those type of breaks, because I know there's people out there who will go out and build structures for the shits and giggles. Excuse my French. I mean, they'll just go out and build stuff and chop it down and stick it up and try to build it and make it look nice. I don't know if they're living in it or just trying to play pranks or what they're doing, but a lot of these structures here that are actual, honestly, the ones that are real, the ones that are, I call them, that I say real, the ones that I think are booger related, I'd almost call them a playpen. A playpen for juveniles. None of them are real big. None of them are huge. They're not big enough for a man to stand up in. They're not big enough for, they're barely big enough for a 5, 6, 7-year-old to stand up in and play in, or to, it's like they build them for the juvenile. They build them just to, give that juvenile a place to hide, if that makes any sense to you. Now, bigger stuff, where trees have been ripped out of the ground by the root, and the root is sitting up is facing up, and then there's another one facing up the other direction, and there's a big old X. That's pretty obvious what did that, but we got some pretty big arches that they're just, to me, they're phenomenally, some of them, the arches will arch 10 to 12 foot off the ground, and in the center, I mean, you can't stand there and reach up and touch the top of the arch where the tree's been arched around and put down to the ground, and you get out for supply, and there's so many arches out there, it's not even funny. It's like something they really enjoy doing. Small TP structures, and most of them are maybe 5, 6 feet tall, maybe 4 or 5 foot in diameter. It's like a game form, I think, or something to do, or maybe like a playpen for a juvenile. And most of them, I mean, that's just about how big they are.
Yeah. Well, that's, yeah, it's interesting. And the structures are definitely something that needs to be investigated more. What about some other encounters that you've had where you've seen the creature? Oklahoma, or do you ever make it into East Texas at all, or have you ever seen them there?
I've made it in Northwest Texas. I've seen quite a few over in Northwest Texas. Now, you would think you get out in Northwest Texas and it's almost like desert land. When you're driving out through there, it don't look like there's anything but flat land out there. To the contrary, there's a lot of canyons, there's a lot of bluffs out there. There's a lot of places for boogers to hide and to live. Caves. There's a lot of cave systems and stuff out there that people just don't know about. Unless you're the farmer or the rancher or even the oil field worker that gets out there and gets off the main highways and gets off the main roads, and you get next to one of these canyons and get to looking off down in there. I would shut the truck off a lot of times and just walk around location. Walk around the outside edge of the location and just wait till I heard something. Hopefully the wife will get to hear something tonight, but a lot of times you'll hear like a chimpanzee or, kind of a monkey sound, which is, normally it's a juvenile. Once things get quieted down and things, they think that you've left, then they'll start chattering. You'll hear them. I've seen them, I'll take my spotlight and I'll shine it down in there, and you'll get an eye shine real quick, but then you can sure see bodies. I mean, you can, I've taken several pictures of, and just, hey, look, right there's one, click. There's another one, click. There's another one, click. And that's another reason why I say, you see one, there's never just one. There's always more than one. If there's two, there's four. If there's four, there's eight. There's 8, there's 16. I mean, there's a lot more of them out there. I thought about, discussing that with you guys too, is, have you guys, since I was a kid doing this, when I was a young teenager, I remember the groups being small, a group of 8 or, maybe 9. I'm seeing groups of 16 to almost 40 and up here in Oklahoma. It's, and then you have, these scientists on these TV shows. How does the food supply support this type of animal? Let's address that for a second. The food supply. You hear them talk about food supply. They don't even realize the food supply that is actually, let's take Northwest Oklahoma, for example, or even Northwest Texas, up in the panhandles. Yeah, it's like a desert out there. I mean, there's a lot of deer. There's a lot of hogs. There's a lot of turkey. There's not a whole lot of fishing unless you get to the lakes. But what about the vitamin tubs the farmers put out? What about the molasses tubs that the farmers put out? What about the cake the farmers put out every single day for the cattle? That stuff is loaded with proteins and vitamins. And I mean, a booger can simply go to the drugstore and get his daily vitamin intake times 10 with a half a hand of, stick his hand in the vitamin tub and dig him out a little bit and chew on that stuff. And I don't know if you've ever tried it, but honestly, it don't taste too bad. I mean, it's not something I'd want to eat every day, but, and the cake that the farmers put out, every single day they go out and put this out for the cattle. I mean, the cattle don't eat all that. They'll eat some of it and turn around and walk away from it and disappear. And there's nobody around these boogers are coming up and getting, a free meal, not to mention getting one hell of a healthy meal that's a heck of a lot better than what we probably eat every day at McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? And I think they're getting bigger. I think they're getting stronger. I think they're healthier. I think that they're able to reproduce healthier offspring, and quite frankly, I think the populations are exploding, especially here.
what makes you think the population's exploding? Are they just seeing more of them? There's more evidence.
And seeing more evidence, not just more evidence, but seeing more of them. Will, I can seriously put you in the passenger seat of this pickup, and we can take a drive. And by the time we got home, by the end of the night, you would not know what to say. I could take you 2 hours from where I'm at right now and take you for a 30-minute drive in the witching hours of the night between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning and show you at least 16 to 30. I know that's pretty big to say, but I'm pretty cotton picking confident about it.
What are some of the juvenile sightings? Or have you seen actual juveniles?
Oh, I've seen a bunch of juveniles. Actually, not too long ago, not too long before I moved to the city, I was out on the Norman well coming out. I was coming out of location, 2 juveniles. This standing right off the side, not more than 20 feet from the lease road. One of them had his hand up on a branch, and I seen him as I was coming around. It was a full moon night, and I seen him, little juvenile, about 4.5, maybe 5 foot tall. He's standing in front of the branch. He's holding the branch up, and as my headlights come around in front of him, he pulls the branch down in front of his face, and his little brother or sister or whatever he is standing right next to him, and they don't budge. They don't move. They won't move. And you just sit there looking at him, not 10, 15 feet off the lease road. I just go on by thinking, yeah, mom and dad's around here somewhere. I'm not stopping messing with you. I mean, that was last year. That wasn't too long ago. Chuck actually has a
some
picture
of the
of
other truckers, some of your coworkers or guys that you work with. How often, or do they see them? Do you guys ever talk about, say, hey, you know?
Well, I was able to get one other driver that worked at the same company to actually talk to me one evening, and he'd been down on a location that I knew that they frequent quite well, because there's always cake on location. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Cake. The farmer.
Elaborate on that a little bit.
It's they call it cake. It's little round pellets. The pellets kind of differ in size. Or the cows. It's like cow feed basically, but they call it cake. But they'll put this stuff out, every single day. They'll put it in troughs. Sometimes they'll just spread it on the ground, and the cows will come by. They'll eat what they want of it, and then they leave. And then buggers will come along, and they'll have their fill of it and leave. The vitamin tubs, and the molasses tubs, and the salt blocks, and the vitamin blocks. I mean, the farmers, the ranchers, they just take that stuff out and throw it off the pickup out in the middle of the field, or wherever they want the cows to eat at the time. And, we're talking big round tubs that are, knee high, and probably 2.5, 3 foot in diameter, maybe. They weigh about anywhere between 65, 70 pounds of, vitamins and minerals and everything a cow needs to be healthy. But, just about all livestock, I believe. And I've seen the sheep farmers over in northwest Oklahoma. They'll do the same thing. They'll put the vitamin tubs out, and molasses tubs and that. But the cows eat it, bulls eat it, sheep eat it. I've smelled it and kind of took a little taste of it, and it ain't half bad. I mean, it's good stuff. But
I hate to say this, but I know exactly what you're talking about. It smells like granola.
Yeah, it does. It smells like granola. The cake, and the cake, it almost smells like chocolate cake. it doesn't, take a little taste of it. It don't taste too bad, but it's loaded with good stuff.
So we can surmise that Bigfoot may have a sweet tooth.
Oh, I would not. Well, yeah. And it's readily accessible for them. Especially out here, especially northwest Oklahoma, northern Oklahoma, any ranch, farm, where these farmers are putting this stuff out. There's grain. You can't tell me a booger is just carnivore. There's no way. He has to, they you figure these farmers, once a year there's tons of wheat laying on the ground and barley and mung beans and you name it, it's there for them. That's and that's I told you that that one I almost ran into. There was grain bins just across the road where that farmer's house was, and then right behind his house where the booger either was coming from or going to were grain bins back there. That stuff's just laying on the ground. Not all of that makes it in the bin. I grew up working on a farm. I know you could have a couple tons laying on the ground.
Well, Will, I'm going to get Will to jump in here for a second. One of the things, because we get people contacting us, they contacted you about, they have a problem with the creatures on their property. Besides cutting away the trees, what's the other recommendation that you have?
Well,
I wouldn't.
I know what you're going to say.
What's that?
I was asking Will, what's his recommendation?
Oh.
Well, as we'll hear in the Mr. Black interviews, he said that bleach is a good deterrent because animals in the wild, whichever one has the strongest scent, leaves the strongest smell, is the boss. So usually, and he said they found that works.
Well, where I was going with this is when you've had people contact you, one of the things you ask is there livestock food available for them? And if so, tell them to put it away, right?
Yeah, right. If you don't, if they're causing problems, you don't want them around, you need to remove the source of whatever's keeping them there.
Yeah, and I was just thinking that would kind of dovetail with what Carl's talking about with these things going out and having access to the livestock vitamins and cake and all that.
Now, corn, livestock, we're not just talking about livestock. It's not just dog food, not just cat food. We're talking corn, Milo, anything with molasses in it. There's a lot of the foods that have molasses in it. Molasses is a good source of, dang it, it's on the tip of my tongue, sugar. Molasses is good. It's a pure source of sugar. It's a pure source of energy. So anything that has a molasses in it, a lot of your deer corns, your deer feed that they're selling nowadays has especially the expensive stuff. We used to call it Dairy 88, and all it is it's a supplement for calves. It's and the deer love it. The deer will eat that stuff like it's candy. Well, so will the boogers. I don't know if Chuck told you guys, but me and him he had a friend called out. He had put a deer feeder up and put a hog panel around that deer feeder. Well, something I know what it was because whenever I went out there, I seen them. But something had literally grabbed a hold of that hog panel and ripped it apart in places. It's pretty hard to rip that that welded hog panel apart, but it ripped it out and just tore the crap out of that deer feeder trying to get hold of that corn. And he had that, the best I could tell, he did have that good deer feed in there. But I walked away from those two and went down around the pond by myself. After we walked around for a little bit, just kind of got the feeling I knew where they were, and ended up getting a few pictures of them. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got a pic. There was 5 out there that day that I did see for sure. But and they had a nice little pond there. Food was right along the river. I mean, it could have been a quarter of a mile from the river. But yeah, any food, any.
You said a lot of this food has molasses in it.
A lot of the even bird food, a lot of the bird foods, the bird stuff. If you pick it up and smell it, I think they use the molasses. Not only is it a pure source of energy and a pure source of sugar, but I think they use it as a something to hold the food together.
Where it's going with this, I was just wondering, in case the molasses, some people out there are going to know what I'm talking about, if it ferments.
Oh, yeah.
You get rum, and I bet who knows, maybe they like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot more sources of food out there for them, I think, than people, especially the scientists, who are saying, they're saying, how can there be a food source to support a population of these things? And the fact of the matter is it's there. You just, open up your eyes and use a little common sense. And I mean, the farmers are feeding them. The ranchers are feeding them. Mother Nature is feeding them. The farmers are giving them stuff that's, making them fat for the winter and strong for the summer. And I think they're getting healthier. I think there's more, I know there's more of them than there was when I was a kid. The groups are much larger now. There's a lot more juvies in each one of the groups than, what I remember as a child, as a young teenager. You'd see 1 or 2, maybe 3 juveniles. And now I'm seeing, 5 and 6 and 8 in a group. I mean, there's a lot more of them.
Well, that's, you brought up an interesting point that I don't think a lot of people considered, and that is that they could really supplement themselves with what the farmers and the ranchers are feeding the livestock. Listen, we're just about out of time, but we got time for one more. If you have one more sighting that's kind of memorable that you could tell us about. And I know I don't mean to put you on the spot if you don't have one.
How about it's trying to remember one that's kind of memorable and one that kind of pops up to me. It was my son's first time seeing one, and I never ever, I try not to force it on him. Try not to, point it out. I think it's to me it's kind of like it should be something that is not pointed out, but you see for yourself, so that you cannot deny what you saw. Quite a few years ago, I think he was 13, 14, which had probably been close to 8, 9 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. We went to Canton, went hunting, and we went deer hunting, and the sun went down, and I'd seen 3 of them that evening, 3 boogers that evening. on down the trail from where we were camping. And we got done eating, and I knew they'd been up there around camp, but they weren't coming close enough to camp in order to see him. But I was kind of hoping he would see one. And I said, "Hey, let's go take a walk." What do you say? He's like, "Oh, okay." It's full moon night. It's a beautiful night. It's nice and chilly. And we start walking down the trail, and we get, I don't know, probably 15, 20 yards from camp. And I seen the big one standing. He's up into the tree, but he's probably 5, 6 feet, maybe 7 feet off the trail. And I kind of back off of Cody a little bit. And it's a perfect night. I mean, if you're watching, full moon nights are perfect for seeing them, because it just, the way the lighting is, the way their hair is, they just seem to poke out like a sore thumb. And I mean, you I don't know, it's just my opinion. They just, there's no, it's like, you know, during the daytime, it's like the sun just flows through them, flows around them, and you may, you know, if you don't know what you're looking at, you may not see anything but a ghost. But I kind of backed off and let him get just a few feet ahead of me, and as it was coming up to him, and I seen Cody turn around, looked at him, and Cody stops, and Cody's just standing there. And I walk up and I put my hand on his shoulder, and I said, "Keep walking." And then I just said, "Keep walking. Don't say a word. Just keep walking. It's okay." Cody is trembling. We get a little bit further. He says, "Can I talk now?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Dad, what was that?" That wasn't his exact words. It was, "What the F was that?" And I said, "You don't know what that was?" And he said, "Was that a Bigfoot?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "We were that close to a Bigfoot?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "How come it didn't do anything?" I said, "Because it doesn't want to hurt you any more than you want to hurt it. If it didn't feel danger, it's probably, you're probably never going to know that you were so close to him unless you just see him. Your reaction is going to get a reaction. If you go acting crazy and go acting stupid, you're going to get a stupid reaction that you're probably not going to like. If you stay calm, you stay relaxed, you're never going to know he was there. It's just like you walk into the woods, you leave the woods just as it was before you went into it. I have been so close so many times within, 5, 6, 7, 10 foot, and have never had bad reactions, bad experience, or even felt, threatened. The way that you I want to say represent yourself, the way you act towards them is the reaction that you're going to get. If you go acting crazy and go losing your mind and acting nuts, well, that's probably what you're going to get in return. You act like you just didn't even there and you didn't even exist, that's the reaction you're probably going to get. Like you didn't even see him, like you didn't even know he was there. But anyway.
Well, listen, Carl, appreciate it. And keep in touch with us. Sounds like you got a lot of activity there, so I can see some future updates coming at some point down the road. But stay in touch with us. And again, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your encounters with us.
But well, if I have anything new, I'll let you guys know.
All right. Thank you, Carl.
Awesome.
In Bigfoot history, near Jackson, Montana, October 1960. Dr. Joseph Feathers, Western Montana College of Education, wrote me that Dean Stanton found bare human tracks 17 inches by 9 inches in the snow about 15 miles south of Jackson. He tracked him 300 yards to a rocky slope on the mountainside. They cleared a windfall 4 feet high without breaking stride.
The Denna people liked him, Tex Cobb. No sentiment was wasted on either side, but he and the tribesmen had a live-and-let-live understanding that was rare in those days. He stayed off their trap lines, and they stayed off his. If an Indian had a salmon net and an eddy, Texas found another eddy, and vice versa. Due to the fact that the Indians trusted him, we became involved with what today would be called, I suppose, an abominable snowman. I have since heard and read a great deal about the abominable snowman. I have seen the photographs of those tracks in the snow on a Tibetan mountain, and to me, they are simply the tracks of a man with gunny sack or some cloth wrapped around his feet as protection from the cold, climbing slewfoot because the slope was steep and he had no crampons. But when I was a youngster roaming the north with Tex, we had never heard of the abominable snowman. We had, however, heard much about Gilyuk, the shaggy cannibal giant, sometimes called the big man with a little hat. Our adventure with Gilyuk occurred while we were camped in a pretty spruce park on Yellow Jacket Creek, south of Tyrone Lake. We had spent the entire summer on this mountain, girt Nelchina Plateau, wandering about in aimless nomad fashion. Tex said we were prospecting and looking for fur sign. Maybe we were. He always had to have an excuse for enjoying the country, a commercial excuse if he could think of one. Anyway, it was now late September, the beautiful time, no mosquitoes, the land ablaze with color, the fish and the meat animals summer fat, the caribou horde gathering, and we were footloose and free as perhaps men can never be again. This morning, Tex was making coffee, and I was down at the creek clearing a mess of grayling for breakfast, when 6 Indians filed through the timber. They stood for a moment, solemnly regarding our 4 horses. To them, a horse was a rarity, a mysterious animal. They called them McKinley Moose because McKinley was the only president they had ever heard of, and the horses were as big as moose. I followed them to the camp. "Have you eaten?" Tex asked them in Denna. They said they had eaten. Chief Stickman was with them. I had seen him once before, at Eklunta village. A squat, square-faced man, very dark, with long hair and quick-moving obsidian eyes. He was the Denna boss of this entire area, and his reputation was bad. But now, he had trouble that he couldn't handle. He told us about it, and as he talked, he kept standing first on one leg, then the other, balancing himself with the moccasined sole of the free foot against the knee of the supporting leg. I don't know whether it was habit or a medicine trick to ward off evil spirits, or both, but it was disconcerting. He had come into this area 2 days ago, he said, with some of his people to kill and cache caribou for winter use. But they had discovered that Gilyuk, the shaggy giant, was hanging around. They found his sign yesterday, and of course everybody knew that Gilyuk wasn't interested in caribou. Gilyuk ate men. "What kind of sign?" Tex asked. "We will take you to see it," Stickman said. "It's not far." After breakfast, we followed the Indians upstream a couple of miles to a burned flat on which a nurse crop of aspen and birch had grown. In the center of the flat stood a ruined birch sapling. It had been about 4 inches through and maybe 10 feet tall. Something had twisted the sapling, as a man would twist a matchstick. The wood had separated into individual fibers. The bark hung in tatters. Stickman and his hunters stood back while Tex and I looked the sight over. Moose often ride a sapling down to get at the tender upper twigs. So do caribou. But no moose or caribou had done this. This had been done by something with hands. It had happened yesterday because the leaves of the sapling had not yet completely wilted. It wasn't the work of lightning, no burns. A freak whirlwind hadn't done it because trees and brush a few yards distant were undamaged. The hard ground showed no tracks. We found no snagged hair on the brush. Absolutely nothing except the incredibly twisted birch sapling. It was, without question, the eeriest sight I have ever beheld in the wilds. Stickman said, "It is Gilyuk's mark. We have seen it before." I wish to make clear that to the Denna people, Gilyuk was no legendary creature their grandfathers had told them about. He was a reality, and they spoke of him as they spoke of bears and wolves. They saw his sign, and they saw him. He was a shaggy giant who wore a little hat and ate men. "We want to ask you to camp with us until we have killed our caribou," Stickman said. "Gilyuk doesn't molest white men. Perhaps he will not molest us if you are in the camp." Stickman had already told us that he was bivouacked on the shore of a pothole lake 2 hours to the eastward. Tex said all right, we would move to his camp in the morning. As he was still looking at the twisted sapling, his green eyes narrowed in thought. I couldn't take my gaze off of it either. Stickman said, "Thanks, Kosaki," a strange word of respect held over from the old Russian Cossack, and we parted company with the Indians. Next morning, I brought the horses in at daybreak. We ate, broke camp, and were putting on the packs when here came the Indians. All of them. All, that is, except Stickman. An old man told us Stickman was dead. Gilyuk had taken him. The chief had got up in the night and gone down to the lake, perhaps for water, but nobody knew. A squaw with a birch bark torch found his red flannel underwear on the gravel beach. It had been torn off of him. There may have been tracks, but the entire hunting party had swarmed over the beach, and by daylight no tracker on earth could have made sense of the jumble. Well, until the day of his own death last July, while on a sentimental journey to a fateful spot in Cook Inlet, Tex was convinced that the cannibal giant Gilyuk killed Stickman. When asked if he believed in the existence of abominable snowmen, Tex would reply that he didn't think there were any around in Alaska nowadays, but that they had existed, at least one of them, a couple of decades back. Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.